Back, folks. This is Texas Tales, the official podcast of Texas Saltwater Fishing Magazine. I am your host, Joshua Shive. I got my co-host with me, James Kosov, and we have another special guest today, Mr. Chuck Uzzle out of Sabine Lake and Lake Calcasieu. How you doing, Chuck?
Man, I'm good. How about y'all?
Very good.
Oh, it's getting warmer, almost too warm. So I don't know how the fishing is up there, but at least I don't have to wear waders anymore.
Yeah, I've been running a bunch, and I was kind of using my swimming pool as the kind of the ice plunge, and it's not quite as shocking anymore. So it is getting better.
No, it's not too bad at all. So, Chuck, what we like to do is we like to get to know you, let the listeners get to know you and how you got into this field, and then we're going to talk a little about fishing and kind of pick your brain. So, why don't you just start us off with Chuck Uzzle? Who is that, and from when you were a child and how you got into all this?
Ooh, man, that's a big step right there. Obviously, my name's Chuck Uzzle. Been guiding on Sabine Lake over 30 years. Born and raised here in Orange. Never been anyplace else. And my friends will tell you, as far as like getting a chance to visit those cats, further down the coast, I need to be doing more of that, and kind of slipped out, started doing a little bit of it, but we pretty much stay right here in our own little mud hole. And we figure out a way to do it. Grew up, like most everybody, I started bass fishing and all. My grandpa was the one who got me kicked off in it. He raised and trained bird dogs. So I grew up shooting quail. And I thought all my buddies that shot ducks were crazy. And then I got into that and, I kind of see where it's at, but it was fantastic. He was a big bass fisherman and shot a wheelbarrow full of quail every year. And we just really, really enjoyed that. And that was kind of what planted the seed, as far as, my career and doing the outdoors. Eased into, saltwater. I was probably in around high school about the time that, Louisiana decided to put a limit on their speckled trout, and way back whenever they didn't have one, kind of telling off on my age, but started doing that. Had a neighbor, and we didn't do anything. We fished. We stayed in the Sabine River, and man, we just chunk and wine. We threw crankbaits and rattle traps and all that, and it'd be just super, super cold, and we just run those shorelines, and we catch those redfish. And man, it was like a southern muskie fishing, it was like a fish of 1,000 casts. And then all of a sudden you'd catch 4 in a row, and it was just, it was epic. But we'd get to the boat launch, and my buddy had a 18 or a 19 foot aluminum boat with the structural integrity of a, wet noodle. And, when it went down the river, it kind of felt like it did a whole lot of this instead of a whole lot of that. So we'd flip a coin to see who had to drive, and, kind of brave the cold, and the other one would lay down in the floor of the boat till we got to where we were going. And we just, we caught redfish, and then, started sneaking out into the lake and, run out there under the birds, and your eyes go, oh my gosh, this is nuts. And boy, I really like it. And, first time one of those redfish, rips off a bunch of drag, and you're like, man, them green trout don't do that. This is pretty cool. So just really, really got into it. Ended up, launching at the same marina with the guy who was guiding, and I started guiding for him, and he was a little less than ethical. And I was fortunate enough to have a guy who was in Texas saltwater fishing for a long time with me and was a mentor and very, very close friend of mine, Dickie Colburn, kind of pulled me aside and said, son, I know your parents, and I know you're better than this. And that started a very close friendship, and I would not be where I'm at today without him. And we started fishing together, and me and him and another fella, Johnny Cormier, we guided together. We were the only people that we felt like fished like one another, treated our customers the same way. You felt comfortable if I couldn't take you, if I was booked, and I could send somebody, that way, or if we had overbookings, that was our goal. We stayed together, and it worked out really, really well. And his tutelage, and man, he reined me in a bunch whenever I was young. I was crazy. I did a lot of dumb stuff, and he kind of slapped me around in the back of the head. You can't be doing that, and just everything, kind of life in general, and really set me on that good path. The way that he handled his business and the way that he taught me, he always professed. He always said, these people get on your boat today. He said, you have to remember, he said, they can hang up on every cast. He said, you get them unhung, you do it with a smile. He said, this is their day. He said, because tomorrow they're going to be in a cubicle somewhere and you're going to be back out on the water. So you gotta treat it as such. You just gotta remember that. And as as frustrating as it gets, you have to treat it as such, because people, their time is valuable. They want to enjoy it and do those things. And just taught me a lot about the business. He did. Another really, really good friend of mine who did kind of the same thing was an OG on Galveston, and one of the tarpon guys, Jim Lavelle, who is now down in Baffin. Jim is another guy that is on my kind of Mount Rushmore of people that I would never want to disappoint. Super, super good guy. Always, even if it wasn't the popular answer, he would always give you the truth and always give you the straight scoop. He just built that way. Right. And just a really good guy. So just kind of branched out, started doing some, stayed in the lake like everybody else, running and chasing trout and redfish and flounder. And, we used to have a pretty thriving striper population and all. And, about the time that my son got into high school and started showing some pretty good ability to, hit a baseball, we started traveling a whole bunch. So I consolidated what I was doing. I was running 2 boats. I was running a big boat and I was running a Poland skiff. And I said, if I'm only going to pull a handful, if I'm going to condense the trips that I'm doing, I want to do the ones that I like. So I got rid of my big boat, stayed just buried up in the marsh and just loved it. It was just so cool to, see those fish. And it was like hunting and fishing together. It was right. Great. And then watching people on the front deck just melt down whenever they see those fish, eat is just so cool, and I get as much of a thrill out of coaching somebody to it as I do, catching it myself. I would practice like my buddies in Mexico, and I'd get on the front of the boat with chalk, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3. And, I'd put my son up there whenever he was young and say, hey, we're going to put like a 2-liter bottle out in the yard, and I'd park my skiff in an empty lot. And the neck of the 2-liter bottle was the head of the fish. So I would change them or whatever. So I was like, you got to lead them and you got to do these things and all that. And it was really cool. And I would walk around out there every now and then, and I'd kind of bend over and I'd throw my foot up and I go, I'm tailing. What are you going to do now? I'm tailing. The neighbors thought I was nuts, but it was a lot of fun. But went from there. He finished up college, and I just had so many people that just kept calling and saying, hey, I got 3 guys, 4 guys. And I was like, man, I got to get another boat. So got another big boat, still run the little one. And now we just kind of cover everything from the skinny water all the way out to, we run the beachfront, some maybe sneak out to the short rigs. I'm one of them guys that thinks Columbus was a liar. I think you get out there and you fall off into the earth. So I have to stay kind of close. But we run that beach and chase those redfish and some triple tail and get down on the jetties and do that. And just take advantage of a very unique fishery that is Sabine. So that's pretty much it in a decent, bigger than a nutshell. Let's say coconut shell.
There you go. Now going back to, because you had an interesting thing that you said, as you transitioned from freshwater to saltwater, you were still throwing your freshwater baits in the saltwater, which
absolutely. And there's a ton of it, and I'm probably gonna get burnt on it, but I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna say it. All these cats that are catching these fish on, these redfish on frogs, this guy.
You're the one who started it.
This guy, I truly believe that that water in those back lakes just gets so warm, and that mud and all that stuff is so rich. You could go in there one day and see the fish, and the grass was perfect, the tide was perfect, and that grass, it seemed like it would just grow overnight. You get 5 o'clock shadow in like 2 days, and that grass would be just on the top of the water, and you really didn't have anything that you could throw at it. And I was like, man, why can't we throw a frog? And I'm gonna tell you what, when the first one ate it, it was like that was the first hit, and I was done. It was over.
And it's talked about a lot right now too. Everybody's throwing damn frogs. Like right now, that's my social media algorithm.
I'm telling you, we use the phrase way too much. It'll change your life. Yeah, flat changer, man. They would do it was like I have I had a buddy of mine who was getting into photography at the time when we were shooting digital and all, so you could shoot a ton of pictures and all that real fast and get it almost looks like the old school cartoons, like the Roadrunner and the Coyote. So that the target's here and they're looking like this, and they would back up and then do that deal. And it just, I would watch people just absolutely lose it. Just like they forgot how to fish. And it's just so cool. They get in the boat and they're looking around like, man, where's all your tackle at? And I tap my pocket or whatever. And man, I got 2 packs of frogs and I got 2 packs of hooks, and that's all we need. I said, kind of like Denzel Washington and Remember the Titans. He's talking about his playbooks. It's like a game to give it time. So it always works. And man, them summer guns are just, because you could do so much with it. You could run it through the grassy stuff and those fish could get to it, or you could swim it to them and let it fall. And when you touched it in those legs, would do that deal. They just annihilate it. And it was so cool when we very first started doing it, pre Katrina, Rita, all that. Basically every fish back there was 5 inches too big. They were just gargantuan fish. And it was great because I could go in there, clients would catch giant fish. Everybody was happy. I didn't have anything to clean at the end of the day, win-win for the team. And then we get Rita. So Rita blew all our water out. We were on the clean side. So it was like, it just flushed, like all our fish left. So the following 2 or 3 years after that, it was just like a kindergarten class. It was 14 to 18 inch fish running around in just little wolf packs. And then like a year after that, it was the greatest crop of tournament class redfish you had ever seen in your life. 26, 27, and they were all just swole up for, 8.5, 9 pounds. I mean, you could go in there and they were just tanks. And then they got big again. We get Ike and some of the floods. So now the water goes up and all those fish leave again. So we kind of, ride the roller coaster on that. So now, it's been pretty steady. Most of those fish are big, and, Sabine Lake's redfish fishery is as good as anybody on the coast. I mean, I've caught more fish over 40 in the last probably 3 or 4 years than I have in probably the previous 30. I mean, they're just dinosaurs roaming around out there, but just kind of a cool way to do it. But we started throwing that frog. I'll never forget. We were fishing when ESPN still had the Redfish Cup, the Oh Boy Alberto Redfish Cup. Some guys from Florida were fishing. We're running the same boat I was running, and they were fishing 2 tournaments. They were fishing a tarpon tournament and the redfish tournament. Well, there was a weekend that those were on the same time. So ESPN allowed you an alternate. So they called me because it was out of Galveston and all that, and said, hey, would you? And I was like, yeah, man, I'll fish it with you. So we fished, we messed around in Galveston and Trinity and all that, and had some decent fish. And we're the morning of the tournament, we're all in line there at Kima, boat to boat. And there's a 17-foot prototype Maverick with a 154 stroke on the back end of it with South Carolina numbers. And I'm standing on the back of the boat. We're on a much bigger, center console. We're going to fish open water kind of deal. And I look on his rod, and there's a frog tied on. And I was like, me, country come to town. Hey, man, that's pretty cool. Where we go, blah, 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 blah. To this day, you can go on YouTube and you can watch those guys catch those fish on a frog in Chuck's backyard.
Oh, my gosh.
In the teeth. To watch somebody else win 50 G's in my backyard with my lure, that was tough. That was tough to follow. But that boat was so cool. I mean, they'd run 60, 63 miles an hour back then, and that 154 stroke made gas, and they'd run down the ditch and run back in those marshes and bang, 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 and it was over. And I was just like, oh, brutal. Like the poker players talk about, they never talk about the great pot that they won. They always talk about the bad beat.
Oh, yeah. Now, were you a big tournament fisherman
No,
or was
I'm terrible. I'm terrible at it. I'm too competitive, and I guess the guide mentality has sunk so far back in my head that it's hard for me to. I need to get bit. I need to get bit. I need to get bit versus I just need to get bit twice.
right?
I have no problem. I have no problem telling people that I enjoy doing it. I still do it on occasion, but I'm not wired that way. I'm too competitive, and I've been doing the guide deal for too long. I'm just like, man, we need to get bit, need something to happen versus, man, I'm gonna throw all day for two fish and kind of do that. And I can, I'll get into that from time to time when we get on some really good fish, or you go down south and that's what's happening, and you kind of make yourself, take a deep breath and focus and do those things. But
Right.
I'm not that guy.
Well, so I'm starting to get into it and I'm very competitive as well. And I always tell this story that the first tournament I ever fished in was with my mom. And this was probably back when I was 17 years old. And it was the worst day of fishing ever. And
she's hardcore, brother.
Oh,
I can't tell you nothing you don't know. She's hardcore.
It was from 5 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock before we weighed in, and we caught one red all day. And I think there was about 60 teams or something like that, and we ended up getting 12th with that one red.
Oh wow!
But it was such a horrible day of fishing, and it wasn't anything that I was used to. And I didn't fish another tournament until probably 20 years later.
I've officially heard that story from both sides. And the other side of it is somebody just wanted to drink beer and eat sandwiches, and I'm not going to say who.
Then there's that, hey man, but you can't lose either way, catching fish or a cold one and a good sandwich.
That's it. And so, kind of fast forward to where we are now. Now I'm starting to really get into the tournament fishing, and I'm getting a lot more competitive. And my wife, she's die hard now. She's got the bug, and so we got about 3 or 4 set up this year. But it is different than just kind of going out leisure fishing, getting bit, like you said. And it's a whole different territory of anxiety when you catch a good one and, oh man, if I miss this one, this could be the one that wins the tournament. So
I wish, this is just me, this is old guy, get off my lawn, or I'm screaming at the clouds or whatever else. But man, these 105-mile-an-hour tournament boats and
oh my gosh,
unlimited range and all that kind of stuff. I like the stuff that say, here's your circle where you can fish, and everybody's got to fish in the same deal and kind of figure it out. There used to be and I forget what it was called, but they had one on the BASS for a while, and they went to a lake and marked 10 spots and took 10 guys. And you got like 40 minutes to fish each spot. You just got in line. They said rotate. 1 went to 2, 2 went to 3, and you did that. And you like, hey, let's really see who can do it, not just who has the best toys.
Right.
I mean, I don't hate on them. I mean, those, man, you can do it. Had a really good friend of mine, James Trimble, who was another tarpon OG from Galveston. Trim, and they fished out of somewhere out of Alabama for one of the ESPN redfish deals. And I think they had one of the number 2 or number 3 out of the mold super go fast boats. And they ran 3 hours one way, ran way off into left Alabama, went back into a marsh in Louisiana, on bust 2 fish, 3 hours back. Did it 3 days in a row. Trim said, man, like to kill me, because on the way back, you're going through the Gulf and fighting all that. So somebody's got to, baby those fish and keep them from doing that. And you get into bad stuff and you're not able to see what's going on behind you. And he said, man, he's miserable. I think they finished second. I was like, man, you'd have to finish in the money just to pay the gas bill, to make those kind of runs or whatever. But it's a different, it's a completely different world. I mean, I miss the old, it was cool to be part of or be around during the heyday, the old Troutmaster world and those kind of things. And to be around those guys and to see the sport take such leaps and bounds, and the things that we learned from those guys. Cause I was on the front row, man. Come December, there's not a trout in Sabine Lake. They all leave. Everybody leaves. And then about 3 months, and then they all come back. It's like a big mass entrance or whatever. And Troutmaster guys showed up, and I can remember me and Johnny Cormier, man, we were out on the north tip of Pleasure Island, and there were 4 guys out there about, belly button deep. And man, we were both laughing. Look at these idiots. What were they doing? The guy on the end, man, he bows up, everything lays over. So got to be a redfish. Man, we pull the binoculars out, and this dude picks up this giant trout. And I was like, oh, dear Lord, what is that? And man, we started watching them. And then we hear the stories about these guys coming from, the motherland, from down south. And they brought all that in. We had to kind of tip our hat and say, hey, man, we learned. And the great thing was like you were talking about the story earlier with hearing the tournament story from both sides. We got to carry that to Big Lake, to Calcasieu, and got to do it during the absolute ridiculous heyday. So we went over there and started wading, and all the Cajuns are like, man, why would you get a perfectly good boat, and that kind of stuff. And man, it was just unbelievable for 3 or 4 years. I mean, it was as good as there was on the Gulf. I mean, it was phenomenal. But just a neat time to be around, that quality of angler, those guys that ran around and did that, and it was something to see. I was think very privileged to have been in the middle of that.
Yeah. Now, on going back to what you were talking about earlier, when the hurricanes come through and it kind of pushes the fish out of there, why is that? What's the science behind that?
Well, the first one, like when Rita came, the west side is the clean side. So when it spins, you have the middle, you have the storm surge on the dirty side, which is the south wind. So it pushes all the water in. Everybody on the back side's catching almost the inverted hurricane, and they're getting everything that blows out. And there are videos, people with Ring doorbell cameras and all that, and you can just watch that water just roll out. And I think it would be really cool. I don't know if you could do it, but I always wondered, somewhere out there in the Gulf, there is a step of water. Like you watch wind blow over a puddle, and it ripple it all up and kind of push it all to one side.
Right.
We're out there, the way that pressure is and the way that wind is, and you've got zero pressure in the middle and everything on the other side, it stacked that water up. So in theory, I would think, I'm not a biologist and I didn't sleep at a Holiday Inn Express last night, but I would think if you were going through the Gulf, at some point it'd almost be like you went up on the water, because everything's there and everything's kind of coming out, and then it settles itself, everything kind of fills back in and it settles back out. But that was for us, man, all that water ran out, like on a magnified norther, when all the water leaves the bay, like that, all in one fell swoop. And then the inverse happened when we got like Harvey and Hurricane Ike. So we were on the dirty side. So we got all the water that came in. So everything floods. So now those fish are just like all over the place. And when that water starts leaving, they just kind of get deposited and go with that water. But it was very strange to watch that marsh go from, every fish is a 35-inch redfish to, man, you couldn't catch a fish that was big enough to eat. I mean,
that's wild.
It was nuts.
Now, one of the things I've also noticed, and you kind of talked about this a little bit, the more and more I talk to guides, their tackle is very simple. And that's something that I think most people overcomplicate what they're putting in their tackle box or what they're taking with them on the water. So why don't you just kind of explain a little bit of your tackle and the simplicity of it?
Man, we have a lot of fun with our freshwater brethren, and we, kind of laugh. And over the years, over the many articles we've done in Texas saltwater fishing, have, some of those guys, it's just paralysis by analysis. I mean, it's like, man, this plug's got to have 4 red dots on it, and this one's only got 3, or this one's got 7, and it's got to have 4. And I mean, they just freak out over it. I'm probably too simple, dark or light. So we get people on the boat, I'm throwing, black or root beer or whatever else. I'll put somebody else on glow or chartreuse, and we kind of get it figured out. I don't think it just gets that crazy. I mean, I can see, there are sometimes, I mean, you'll actually, get water clear enough, like the guys down south, they'll see a fish come up and refuse something. We don't get that opportunity that much because our water's not as clear. We don't get that, kind of deal. But
Right.
I just believe it's dark and it's light, and I think there's a lot to be said for reaction strikes and just kind of being in the right zone. Matter of fact, that's what I had written about for an upcoming column. But being in the right, you see people attack a shoreline perpendicular rather than parallel. So when you throw at a shoreline, and as soon as you pull your bait out 5 or 10 feet, now you're in deeper water, so you're away from it. But if you get parallel to it and throw, you bring that bait back, and it stays in that magic 3 feet of water or wherever
Right.
you need it to be. So it's being in the zone, being at the at the right place in the right time. I think that puts a lot. I'm not saying that an exact pattern doesn't come into play sometimes, but I don't think it's just my own personal opinion, and that's kind of where I go. But as far as tackle, that we've incorporated a lot of things from the freshwater world, because we used to guide on Toledo Bend and Sam Rayburn both whenever we thought all the fish left Sabine Lake. We didn't know any better. We're supposed to be here wade fishing in the winter. But a lot of crankbaits, a lot of swim baits. One of Dickie Colburn's favorite deals, he said, "My man can make a great living on a 6.5 foot spinning rod." And we would throw the little small jigs, just like you would crappie fish or whatever. And we would go down the shoreline and just absolutely vacuum that thing on flounder. So it was like a Texas rig or like a, slow crappie deal. We would do that, but we incorporate a lot of those things, like I said, bringing the frog in and things like that. And it's just amazing that, you can get a freshwater guy and he can get on a boat and he's just got it looks like he's carrying Academy with him. Just dump all that stuff. You got all these boxes and 17 different colors. And man, you get a saltwater guy and he's got one rod, two maybe, and he's got a wading box and it's got 4 or 5 plastics in it and 2 or 3 size jig heads. And there's a couple of corkies, couple of top waters, and man, we're good for the day. So it is nice in that regard, but I think people get carried away. And I was talking to folks at Real Tackle Outdoors today over in Lumberton, and looking around the store, and I was like, I said, all these lures in here catch way more fishermen than they catch fish. So, because I was digging around in my garage, and I opened a duffel bag, and I was like, holy cow, I forgot I had these. And it was like forever. We threw a Glow Queen Cocoa Minnow under the original Mansfield Mauler, and we were spraying the stink on there, the oil of anise, that kind of deal. And that's what we did, man. We make long drifts, and we throw that Mauler, and we just destroy them. And we quit because the latest, greatest, nextest, bestest, mostest came along, and you can't catch fish on that anymore. You got to go to this. And I made myself a pact that after Dickie passed away, that I would go back and I would fish a lot of the places that we used to fish and fish the same way that we used to fish. And lo and behold, those fish are still there, and you can still catch them on the same stuff that we used to throw. You don't have to be on the newest, bestest, mostest, or whatever. So it's I think it's if you're willing to be confident in your approach and how you throw that lure, then you're going to catch them. I was talking about Jim Lavelle earlier. Man, Lavelle gets out there, and his son and a bunch of his buddies who are really good young fishermen, and they've got the newest, coolest baits and all that other stuff. Man, Jim's standing out there waist deep, throw a cocoa on like an 1/8 or a 1/16, and just do this and just wear them out. And them cats that are throwing those $25 custom plugs and all that, and he's just standing there just smiling the whole time. So it's there's no rhyme or reason.
You talked a lot about the fishing and kind of being younger. The one underrated thing I don't think that gets talked enough about, at least, is being an entrepreneur, business owner, especially at a young age, as a fishing guide. Kind of what did that look like, or what was the guidance you got from your guides?
Man, I'm gonna tell you one thing. I've always believed, and I've always told guys that I worked with. I worked in a plant as well as being a fishing guide and all that. And I would always tell guys, especially like working at a plant, do not be afraid to ask a question. Do not be afraid. Humility is your friend. So I've seen those guys. I can remember back when the big show was the Houston Boat Show, back when we still had the Dome and the Astral Hall and all that other stuff. And that was such a, man, I'd go in there and just be, starry eyed at, oh man, I saw this guy's name in the Houston Chronicle. And, oh man, that was such a, that was, and it was a big deal. They were like rock stars to you. And you could show up, kind of have your hat in your hand and say, hey, Josh, man, my name's Chuck. I fish over on Sabine and all that. And man, I've been doing this, but I've been struggling kind of doing yada, yada, yada. Do you got any hints or anything like that? Man, those guys would tell you anything you wanted, anything. You show up there, you got the old peacock feathers out, your old chest bowed out, and you've been everywhere but hell and seen everything but the wind. And man, those guys will let you twist. They'll just let you go on about your business. But you're not that you have to bow down to them or whatever, but you can approach somebody with, look, I'm very confident in who I am. I know there are guys who are way better fishermen than I am, and I don't mind asking the question. And if you approach a lot of those older guys or people that, that have been successful and all that, they're very forthcoming. They'd like for you to be, they're not going to go, hey, GPS spot blah on such
right.
Whatever, but they're going to tell you, hey, think about this when you're doing that, and we'll give you things. And man, that learning curve just takes off. Don't be afraid to come up and ask those people, if you're struggling with a technique, geez, I don't know how many people, and I do it myself, man, am I throwing a corky right? And clients are just always, how are you supposed to throw it? We heard, if you throw it slow, then slow down even more, and this, that, and the other. First time I went down there with them cats from South Texas, they looked like they were whipping lions. It was, shaking it and all that. I was like, what is this? I thought we were supposed to, man, I thought nobody's supposed to talk and everybody's supposed to be still and all this other stuff. Man, it's just, you don't know unless you ask. And most guys are cool enough to give you a straight answer. And if they're not, they're probably not somebody you want to be talking to anyway.
I haven't met a lot of guides that aren't willing to be helpful. I can't say that I won't meet any, but the more and more I've gotten into this industry, everybody's been very forthcoming with information, how you do certain things, because I think they truly, they love the fact that people want to be engaged in fishing. Now, that does make the waters a little bit more muddier when you got 900 boats on the water come Saturday and Sunday. But ultimately, most of the people out there they're pretty forthcoming with the information. And kind of with that, you as a guide for so long, when you start your day, how do you determine where you're going to go, what you're going to do? Do you kind of already know the night before, or when you wake up, you feel the wind a certain way and you go, all right, I probably need to go this direction? Or how does that process work?
Yeah, you definitely got to have something in your hip pocket, if the weatherman, just blows it. So you got to have, and that's one of the great things about fishing here is that we have that deep water that we can get in. We can get in the Sabine River, the Intercoastal, the Neches River, and all that, and we can grind some stuff out. Guy shows up from Oklahoma, and he's only got one day in here because he's here on work or whatever. You can't just say, man, I'm going to reschedule you. We're blown out. You got to figure something out. So you got to have a little bit of that, in your hip pocket. Now, one of the things, like we were talking about, people being forthcoming with information, that's one of the reasons that I actually started writing. People would write stuff, the local outdoors guys, and, it was back before, you could get it on your phone and it was instant or whatever. You had to wait till Thursday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, when the outdoor stuff, came out, and you read this deal. So you was, somebody say, hey man, they're catching them off the end of Jimmy Joe's rocks, that kind of deal. And man, on Friday, the whole world was on the end of Jimmy Joe's rocks. Show up and go, man, now what do I do? There was a guy, who, and I'm not sure if he's still doing it anymore. I know for a long time he ran a school on Sam Rayburn, and people would go up there, and the night before they would have a dinner, and he would hand each person a stack of 3x5 note cards. And he would tell them, on each note card, you write down every time you get a bite. You write down what you're throwing, all your particulars, inside of a channel, inside of a grass line, outside of a grass line. I was in the trees. I was in 5 feet of water. I was throwing a white spinnerbait with double willow leaf, blah, 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 blah. You write that down, put that in a bag. Next time you get a bite or you catch a fish, do the same thing. And at night, he says, okay, get your cards out. And you start laying your cards out on the table. And the next thing you know, there was one that had a pile, and there was one here, maybe 2 there, whatever. And the one that had the pile, that obviously, hey, man, all these fish we caught were in 6 feet of water on the inside bend, the first inside bend of a creek, and I was throwing a crankbait. And he was illustrating how you go about doing that in your mind. You go, okay, what was I doing? So when you get ready to tell somebody the worst thing in the world, I say the worst thing in the world, most everybody comes up to you at the launch and go, what'd you catch them on? You don't need to know what you caught them on. I need to know the kind of water. I don't need to know exactly where it's at. But if you tell me I was in 4 feet of water and I was at I was on the south side of each point, or I was on such and such tide or whatever else, that's way more important than the exact spot, because I can tell you that, and 4 feet of water with some shell in it means something different to you than it does to you. And it's just, that's mentally how to picture making that pattern. And when you can do that, it makes it easier to be, obviously to become more successful, because now you don't have to write it down. You can do it mentally. You can say, oh, pay attention to that. I got that. And I was just dead sticking it, or I had just hopped it really quick and I got my first bite of the day or whatever. Well, let me see if it does that again. And then you can kind of start honing in on what those fish want. Cause it's, on Sabine, we're a big cereal bowl. I mean, we don't have, all that structure where you can go to a shell pad or a grass line or fishing potholes or whatever. Our fish move. Everybody's chasing, looking for bait, looking for slicks. You're fishing drains, tidal movement, that kind of deal. There's some structure, but not near like you look at Sabine and you go east and go to Big Lake, or you go west and go to Trinity and Galveston and all that. We're an anomaly compared to those other bays, because the lack of structure, and then the freshwater, the huge amount of freshwater that we get from the Neches and the Sabine that comes through there, and it forces you to have to deal with changing salinities, watercolor, so on and so forth. Now this year, knock on wood, it's been fantastic. Normally this time of the year, the lake looks terrible, but it's as beautiful as I've ever seen it, for as long as I've ever seen it in the spring. So that's made life it's a whole lot more predictable to be able to go, I'm going here because that's where the fish have been.
Now, and it's funny because Matagorda is pretty clear as well, which is kind of unusual. I was out there last weekend and I could see my feet, and normally it's so muddy that I can't see an inch below the water.
Oh yeah, you track a coon across it.
So when you started guiding, kind of going back to that moment where you started guiding, was there any challenges there, getting used to just helping the people, getting used to some of the personalities or anything like that? What was some of the bigger challenges that you faced guiding?
That's kind of the difference to me, being a really good fisherman and being a guide. You're almost like what's the stereotypical, character in the movie, the bartender who's there to listen to all your woes and, feed you good advice and, kind of babysit you, through the day, so to speak. You've got to be able to navigate that. You got to be able to, have good conversation with people, and you got to treat them correctly and do those things. And you got to be, a good fisherman, good teacher. And, you've got to be patient, because there are a lot of guys who are great, great fishermen. Same way. I mean, how many times you heard about a great baseball player who was a great hitter, and it was very easy for them, and they got frustrated. They couldn't coach. guys who were, career 200 hitter, but they knew how to talk, they knew the game, and they could coach. They turned into the best coaches.
Right.
So those were the biggest things. You had to kind of navigate, how people took, not criticism, but how they took advice. Some people were like, I'm going to fish it like this or whatever. You may say, hey, you might think about, this, and then most people are like, oh, okay. And they're very receptive to that. And then, some people aren't. By God, I'm going to fish. This is the way I've been fishing it, and this is how it goes. And you go, okay, man. I mean, I can only tell you so much. So there's a handful of things that go along with that. I mean, kind of the funny deal, I'll never forget being a young guy and having the first lady on the boat and get a restroom break. And you're just like, oh man, what do I do now? Kind of deal. Luckily enough, the first lady that I had was pretty hardcore. And she said, where's the pee bucket? And I was like, what? I said, I got a bucket in the back that's got my cast net in it. She goes, that'll be fine. I'll go up on the front deck. And I was like, all right, so I try, if I have ladies in the boat or whatever, I try and, keep myself somewhere close to where I can, maybe run them up to, to a proper restroom and kind of, do those things. You have to be polite and, have some etiquette about yourself, when you do that. So.
Well, I fully get that, because every time I go fishing with my wife and I've got buddies on the boat, or if we're fishing with buddies, she's normally the only girl on the boat. So it's kind of the same thing. Oh, yeah. We've got our pee bucket. And the good thing is most of the time we're wade fishing. So
there you go.
She's just like, just drop me in the water. I'll be fine.
Yep.
But that's a good point, because you have to be kind of aware of that, because a lot of women that go out fishing, especially going on a guided trip, they're very proper and they're probably not going to pee in a bucket.
Sure. Absolutely. Being, kids, whatever else. I mean, you've got to manage attention spans, and you've got to, kind of do those things. The very first guy I ever guided, still a great friend. He used to bring his grandsons, and they were young. And he called me one day and said, hey, I'm going to bring the boys. He says, I don't care what we catch. Just let them catch some fish, and they want to see an alligator. Oh man, we need to get this one out of the park. Done. So the wind's blowing pretty good. We kind of hide in the marsh a little bit, and man, they're catching some small redfish and a trout or a flounder, just kind of a mixed bag or whatever. Man, I'm looking around all day. I can't buy an alligator. Cannot buy an alligator. I'm like, man, this is crazy. So we start heading back, like we're heading back to the dock, where he goes, hey, he says, you show them boys an alligator? Sure am. Man, I'm talking out of the side of my neck now, hoping that I'm going to run into one. So I pull into this bayou, and lo and behold, big man upstairs kind of shined on me. And there's about an 8-footer, swimming around. And I was like, there they are, boys. So I reach in. I had a bag that I kept in the boat. It was busted up top water plugs, and I would do it for people. And I'd find one that was all ratty or whatever, and fling it out there. And he does this deal. Man, I set the hook on him, and I go, here you go, boys. And they went round and round and round that boat. I mean, squealing like Girl Scouts, just running around that boat. So finally, we get the alligator. He comes up to the side of the boat, and he looks at you, and he's like, okay, Chuck, you can't do nothing with me, and I can't do anything with you. And I'm like, all right. So I get the dip net, the landing net, kind of get it all mangled up in his teeth, and I pick his head up. And he opens his mouth, and he does this deal. And I thought they were going to run to New Orleans. They were just, they all freak out, like they're going to run across the boat. I was like, hang on. Y'all kneel down right here, and I'll hold him up, and his mouth will open up, and we'll let your grandpa take a picture. It looked like he's coming in the boat. Man, they thought that was cool. Man, they talked about that till they graduated college. He would call me, and I would ask him. I was like, hey, I said, when they made it back, because one of them was from California and the other one was from maybe North Texas. I said, how big was that alligator when they got home? He goes, Chuck, he said it was 12 feet, and he was biting the boat. I was like, so that's, when they remember stuff, and you can do things like that with kids or whoever else, that's, kind of managing the day and managing the time. And, you can make a really difficult day really good, quick, if you're patient and you're able to do something, show them something cool or do something like that. Have them, see a rosette And I go, man, I didn't want y'all had flamingos. No, it's not a flamingo. It looks like it, but that's a rosette. Or well, I never saw one of those. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And just stuff like that. And it also kind of helps you, kind of stay grounded. That way you're not taking things, for granted. Like, oh yeah, another 30-inch redfish, big deal. And
right.
If I get like that, I've given my wife and my friends explicit instructions on, man, put a bullet, when I'm not fired up about it, I need to go do something else.
Now, this is a big struggle of mine because the last couple of tournaments I fished at, it was kind of the rodeo roundup style. I had to catch all three species: redfish, trout, flounder. And I've heard you talk a couple times about flounder. Give me the secret to catch a good flounder.
Pins included.
Man, I tell you, historically, we have done numbers in the marsh drains, and we've done size in the deeper water, in the channels. And obviously, it's on the, during the migration. Now we have that, closed in the winter or whatever, but you can do some really big fish in the spring. Those fish on the, on the drop offs on the channels where they kind of get them pinched in, and those better fish, that's the secret on catching a really good flounder in my book. And I mean, we catch some solid fish, in the marsh, but mostly they're good quality fish that, that are great to eat, great size. But those bigger fish, when you start talking, 5-6 pounds or whatever, those fish are going to come from that deeper water. You're not going to see a whole lot of those in the marsh. I'm not going to say you're never going to do it, but you're a whole lot more likely to see them in that deeper water, fishing those drops or those good flats along those drops in the channels, near the jetty and channels like that. That's the key to it.
So, and that's something also where I swear every tournament, it comes down to that last moment. Now when you're fishing for the flounder, how does your kind of retrieve change? How does your baits change? What's the difference in that?
I guess if you're depending on I'm going to say I'm not in a tournament and I'm looking to catch a flounder, I'm probably going to throw, a finger mullet or something like that. If I'm not going to throw something live, so many people, I mean, it's just been proven, you get on a gulp curly tail or something that's got some stink on it. And, it's kind of, that little hop across the bottom. I've seen guys just absolutely wear the keeper fish out. Like we'd be running a shoreline and throw like little swim baits, like the usual suspect, it's got the paddle tail and it's already pre-rigged, and they would just swim those down, kind of just let them touch the bottom and then just kind of let them swim like that. And I'm talking just flat out vacuum a place with those fish. But those better trout seem to like meat, they want some protein.
Right. Now,
I'm sorry.
Now, so also you're a big hunter.
Yes, sir.
Is that right? So how does that balance happen with fishing and hunting and other parts of the year where you kind of put the reels up and pull the gun out, or vice versa?
We usually leave the reels out all year long and try and do it in between. Now I'm going to tell you, there's one guy who is super, super happy to hear me talk about shooting turkeys, and you know exactly who that guy is. I've been bit by that bug here pretty hard. It's been a while since I had gone out and shot some turkeys, and man, I've been doing a little bit of it this year, and I'm eat up with it. So I'm pretty fired up about that. But I'm a big waterfowl guy. I run some duck hunts. We do some stuff here, and we do some stuff in Oklahoma as well. So that's a great deal. We enjoy that a lot. Teal season is always good for us. The first split is usually really, really good. And, the second split can kind of be funky. Now we had a great year this year. For whatever reason, I had some marsh that decided to grow some grass, and I couldn't run them out of there. We were just, I think I told people at the fishing show, I was like, look, man, I said, I think those ducks get together and they have a big meeting, and they go, okay, this year, Josh is gonna get it really good. James is gonna get really good, and Chuck's gonna get kicked in the teeth. And then they spin the wheel next year, and it's gonna be okay. Chuck gets to get them this year, and everybody else, and we're all like that poor dude who's pulling the slot machine. You don't want to get up because as soon as you get up and leave that lease or that property, the next guy that comes in, it's going to be like the epic year of years. You're just like, yeah, I struggled so bad for 4 or 5 years, and then this guy rolls in on the first year, and they just, it's Stuttgart revisited.
Now, James, pull the website back up. I'm curious about the one picture now. Scroll up. Back up. I think it was a bunch of Canada geese that look like.
Oh yeah, that's some Oklahoma stuff.
Was that no? So you guide all the way up to Oklahoma as well? Yeah,
we've got some good buddies up there that we run with, and man, they got it figured out. It's funny. When my son was playing college baseball, I was playing at a JUCO in Oklahoma, and every year, whenever he was young, him and a couple of his buddies that I kind of adopted as mine, we would go and we would make a road trip every year. We'd go someplace new and go hunt. And I mean, we went all the way to Minnesota and worked our way down, through the Panhandle, and we would go and do we had some great times, in West Matagorda. We'd go over there and, shoot some puddle ducks and shoot some redheads and all that. I always told everybody, man, if they would give me 2 redhead drakes and 2 penny drakes, or whatever, and let me shoot 4 every day, that would be my perfect strat, because I just, in the environment that you're in. But we had gone up there, we would go hunt the Panhandle, and you could shoot 3 Canadas. And down here, this is not a, I'm big and bad and beating my chest or whatever, but you're at the bottom of the flyway. So when you're a kid, you better get it figured out. There ain't no get them one more pass, or we're going to work them a little bit closer. Man, they get close enough, you better sling it. So when we got to going up there, and all of a sudden it was like, man, what are these birds doing? It's 15 yards and they're 3 feet off the ground and they're backpedaling, and we go boom, boom, boom. And everybody would shoot their 3 on the first bunch. And it was like, it's over. And you would ask those guys, well, can we shoot some ducks or can we shoot some snow geese? No, man, we're done. I was just like, okay, I tell you what, next year we're going to find a place where the limit's a little bit more liberal. And that following year, Oklahoma raised their limit, and it was like, oh yeah. So we take off and go up there and just fall in love with it. Fast forward, my son gets out of school. He's playing ball up there. A guy walks up to him at the batting cage during BP. And my son said there was a little burger joint in this little bitty pissant map dot town where he was from, and we would drive through there. We saw his name on the roster. So he walks up, and my son goes, man, I sure could go for a cheeseburger at ABC, restaurant. And he goes, how in the hell do you know about that place? Man, we eat there every year whenever we come up here and hunt. He goes, what are you hunting? He says, man, we come up here and shoot ducks and geese. He said, dude, lived here all my life, never shot anything but deer and turkeys. Hunter said, all right. He says, I tell you what, he said, we'll do it. He said, come back to the dorm and I'll show you where we've been hunting. So they pulled Google Earth up and got it all on there. And my boy's going, man, here, and here, whatever. So the other boy reaches over. He goes, that's my grandmother's. That's my uncle's. That's our house. So the outfitter that we had become friends with had access to this family farm. Boy picks up the phone, calls his dad, says, hey, put a lock on every gate and don't open it till we get there. Hunter calls me up. He goes, hey, when you come up here for the doubleheader, bring every goose decoy we own. I was like, what are you talking about? He goes, man, all that land that we've been hunting on, my partner's family owns all of that. I was like, are you kidding? He goes, no. He says, we got access. I was like, score. So we started running around up there, and a bunch of those boys that he played baseball with that had never duck or goose hunted, they all started doing it, and it graduated into, they started running some trips, and then, it got big, and they got to doing really, really well. So we keep going up there. We have there's a house that we leave all our gear. The boy that he was friends with, his grandfather had passed away, and they were just using it as a storage. So it became the frat house. So all our stuff stayed there. We shipped a bunch of beds and all that up there. And man, we just go up there and have a ball, shoot those. It's cheating. I mean, to be shooting mallards in dry field wearing tennis shoes, and you drove your truck out all your gear,
that sounds like dove hunting.
like, y'all have no mosquitoes, no mud, no snakes, no alligators, none of that. I said, y'all have no idea how good you got it. And the boy that was friends with my son, that his family had all the land, he came down and stayed with us for about 6 months after school. And I brought him down to our marsh and showed him what it was like. And he goes, "Oh, dear God." And I was like, exactly. I said, that's why we love it so much when we go up there, man. I said, it's cheating. It's just too good.
Now, it's that time of year, like you said, it's turkey hunting.
Yes.
And so where are you turkey hunting at?
I have got some buddies that have some land out toward the hill country. And I actually just came back last week. I had gone to a friend that we had met through baseball when my son was playing college at Northwestern State. They were from Mississippi, and we went to Mississippi and hunted easterns out there with them. So that was super, super cool. He's and my buddy, I mean, he's the one that kind of gave me the itch, because he's really good and he's really mad at him. He's like EJ is. I mean, multiple states, and ain't no place too far, ain't no hill too high or whatever. I mean, they're mad at him.
It's personal with turkeys.
Yes, exactly.
Now, have you ever hunted with Everett?
I have not.
It's quite the experience.
I'm sure it is. We're way overdue for a trip together for sure.
Yeah, he's excessively mad at him, and it's funny. We kind of do like a guy's trip at my deer lease. We've got a spot in the hill country, and there's it's a river that runs right through the property. It starts and stops in our property, which is kind of weird. And we have quite a few turkeys. And last year was the first year that he had a gobbler come up right to the decoy, and I was like, "Why didn't you shoot it?" He goes, "I don't know. I guess I just wasn't mad at him today." First time in years that he did not take the shot. So I don't know if he's getting soft in his old age or what that is.
Well, I'm hoping when I was in Mississippi, the guy that runs the property where we were at, I told him, I said, "Man, my editor at the magazine," I said, "the only bird that he hadn't killed is an eastern." He said, "Bring him." So maybe next year I'll get a chance to bring him over there, and we'll get an opportunity at at an eastern.
There you go.
I had one at a little more than 20 yards, and I should have killed the bird, but I didn't want to be that guy. There was a little bit of stuff in front of it, and I mean, I could have slung it, and I feel sure I probably would have killed it, but I just didn't want to be that dude, and really thought the bird was going to kind of come out and do a little bit more. So we got to do everything, but kind of put our hands on it. It came in and danced and did what we wanted it to do, and kind of sealed the deal. I kicked myself all the way back to Texas. I was like,
a long drive home without a turkey.
Should have shot it, but
that would have been me. I would have took the shot and probably would have been bad, but I would have went ahead and took it.
Yeah.
But Chuck, hey, we appreciate you coming on. Like I said before, you've been a great contributor to the magazine for many, many years, and you're kind of one of the experts in your field. And we really appreciate you coming here, just talking about yourself, talking about all the good, the bad, and the ugly of the guiding and everything in between.
Man, it's a pleasure and an honor to be part of the magazine. Everett and Pam have done such an incredible job elevating it from where it used to be. I mean, it was like the Auto Trader, it was, and they've just brought it so far, and been on the forefront of a lot of the conservation aspects, and have always been pro kids and those kind of things. So it really is. It's a lot of fun. I'm very proud to have been in it as long as I've been in it, and hope to keep doing that for many, many more years.
Absolutely. And so if everybody does not know, you can go to wakesanddrakes.com and go check out the website. You can watch the videos. Chuck puts videos on there, just kind of giving some general advice on hoping that you make you a better angler, and hoping that you can get you in on some more fish, and also hoping that you'll put a frog on the end of that line.
That's it. We'll change your world, screw you all up, and I'll have to take credit for all the counseling that, that'll come with that, because it'll flat mess you up. I've seen some really good fishermen just absolutely go to ground on the front deck of that little tin boat that I push around.
Well, thanks again, Chuck.
Thanks, Chuck.
and we really appreciate it.